And yeah, there we go.
Oh, good Lord. Anyways, well, what is going on, everybody? We are obviously not in happy moods, despite the fact that, the Grizzlies just got railed at home. So
Yeah, there we go.
that was not very fun, was it, Darius?
No. That was the first Grizzlies game in a while where I have to switch to Monday Night Football.
I kind of just, at one point, I just had to laugh at it a little bit because Tyler Johnson just made everything he took.
Yeah, unfortunately, games like that happen, and it wasn't good for the Grizzlies today.
At one point, like, the biggest win of the night was the fact that Vince Hunter scored.
Oh my goodness.
That was the biggest, like, that was the best part, was just the fact that he scored his first NBA bucket. So, but as Darius said on Facebook, we're just going to talk, I guess, relatively briefly. I don't know how long we're going to be on here tonight. Probably not going to be on here very long, at least not as long as we have been in the past. In the past, I know it's been over an hour. Will likely not be an hour this time. Of course, I say that we'll be on here for 2 hours. So.
Yeah.
What we're going to talk about tonight is just what we think the best, kind of just the best course of action for what the Grizzlies should do the rest of the season. Obviously, it's still somewhat early. I mean, you're barely 30 games into the year, but when you think about it, with each loss, Darius, the Grizzlies are kind of just putting themselves into a bigger hole. And I think at this point, instead of trying to be competitive, instead of trying to make the playoffs again, I think me and you can both agree the best course of action here is to probably go ahead and just accept that this era of Grizzlies basketball is over and it's time to build for the future.
Yeah, unfortunately. I definitely didn't want the season to come down to this, but when you're 8-18 and you lose to the Mavericks twice, it's not the best, but there still is some optimism out there for Grizzlies fans. Mike will be back hopefully sooner than later, but as far as like players are getting older, sometimes some things might have to come about. Definitely coming from head ownership to coaching. We just went through a railing in the coaching staff, so it's some things we got to address there too.
And me and you, we talked before we got on here. Obviously, we agreed. I think that there's three things that this team is really missing. They're missing leadership. They're missing really young players that they can build around. They don't have a lot of them, and they just don't have, I guess, the draft capital that a team like them that is struggling should have. Basically, right now, if you're in the Grizzlies' shoes, you should theoretically be able to prepare for the draft. But right now you can't because you don't know what's going to happen with Mike Conley when he comes back. If he comes back and the Grizzlies are competitive and they can make a push for that playoff spot, if they don't land in the bottom 6 of the NBA, they lose that first-round pick. So their first-round pick this year is top 6 protected, which means if it doesn't fall in the top 6, you lose it. So the Grizzlies are in that odd predicament, and a lot of that is because of horrible trades that have been made.
Ugh.
AKA the Jeff Green trade, the Tayshaun Prince trade. Just those two stand out among others, but those are the two trades that have really hampered you because while you got young talent in Ed Davis and Austin Day from that one, and then you got Jeff Green obviously in the other, none of those players ended up panning out for you, and that's a problem. Mm-hmm. So the Grizzlies have a first-round pick this year that is top 6 protected. If they continue at this current pace, they are the 4th worst team in the NBA, which means they would have, by odds, the second best chance to land the number 1 pick. Obviously, with the new draft lottery setup, the bottom 3 teams, no matter what their record is, they each have a 14% chance of landing the number 1 overall pick. That 4th team, where the Grizzlies currently sit, they have a 12.5% chance to land it, which means they have a decent chance to land the number 1 overall pick. Obviously, it's not a 100% chance, and there's also a chance that you could not even end up in the top 5. But those chances are slim. So basically what we want to discuss is where we think they need to go from here, what they need to do with current players, and what changes need to be made. And then when you get to the draft, who do they look at as who to build this franchise around? So let's make like Katie Inman from MT10 and let's get started.
Oh,
I'm challenged. So Darius, we talked. Right now, the Grizzlies lack leadership. And a lot of people, and I wasn't in this boat until tonight, a lot of people really want Marc Gasol gone. Mainly because a lot of people loved Coach Fizz, myself included, and they felt that Marc Gasol was the coach killer that got him fired. I don't think that was the only reason he got fired, but it was definitely the main reason. Marc Gasol is what, 30, 33 years old now?
Yeah, I want to say so. I'm gonna look. I got it on my phone.
Realistic, Darius, what do you think the Grizzlies in a trade could get back for him?
Yeah, he's 32. So yeah, he's getting up there in age. Like I said, it really depends on who you trade with. Like me and you discussed earlier, the Cavaliers is probably a good option, and we all know that team, they're not, rebuilding no time soon. They're still pushing for championships. So I think and the reason why I think like the good thing about the Cavs situation is that if you trade him and like what you can get, like how you said earlier, say you get Tristan Thompson, get the Brooklyn pick, and the second round draft pick. Because we know really for the Cavs, draft picks really aren't anything. Like this team just signed Dwayne Wade in the offseason. So are they really looking for younger players? Probably not. And another thing I like about it too is that Mark can give the Cavs what Tristan Thompson didn't give them, and that's to space out the floor. Tristan is, sort of like he's developed a little bit of a jump shot, but Mark can literally step out there and shoot threes just from what we know. So, I think that'd be a real good trade, beneficial for both teams.
Yeah. I agree 100% with that, mainly because, Tristan Thompson would be a good pickup for the Grizzlies. Obviously you lose a lot of scoring, but what you lose in scoring, you would gain in defense and rebounding, in my opinion, and effort. So do I think that Tristan Thompson is the answer to the Grizzlies' problems? No. Do I think he's a long-term Grizzly? No. I think that he probably ends up traded at some point by the Grizzlies as well, trying to get draft picks. But I think obviously the boon in that trade is the Brooklyn pick. Now, everyone is going to see – they're going to hear – y'all are going to hear this, and y'all are going to say there is no way that Marc Gasol is worth the Brooklyn pick. I would beg to differ because of this. There's two reasons. One, look at the Brooklyn Nets record. They are 10-15 right now. They are currently in the line for a draft pick that is inside of the 9 to 12 range. That Brooklyn pick is not going to be the number one overall pick that everyone thought it was. Now, albeit only 4 games separates them and the worst team in the league. But Brooklyn, in my opinion, especially after giving up getting Jahlil Okafor, they're not the worst team in the league, in my opinion. They've got young players. I like Sean Kilpatrick. I like D'Angelo Russell. I like Jahlil Okafor with them getting a fresh start. I think there's good players there. So I don't think that they're the worst team in the league. And two, you can go to the Cavs and say, look, we're giving you one of the best centers in the NBA. And this way for the Cavs, if and when LeBron leaves next year, look at who they still have. They'll still have Dwayne Wade. They'll still have Isaiah Thomas. They'll still have Marc Gasol. They'll still have Kevin Love in all likelihood. So just like that, with those players in place, you could still be a contender. You've got the players there to still possibly contend for a title. At the very least, you could fight for the East. So I think that is a very, very reasonable trade. And then also, you mentioned it, what good does a second-round pick do for the Cavs?
Nothing.
Not a damn bit. It doesn't do any good for them. So I think that's a reasonable trade. So one thing we didn't really talk about was what do you do with Mike Conley? So I kind of know where I think I know where you stand on that, but I'm interested to hear what you think. When Mike Conley comes back, if the Grizzlies continue to struggle, what do you do with him, Darius?
You know what? Even though as much as a big fan I am, I'm gonna put that aside. But I think as far as Conley, what you should do is I would say like build around him because The only reason I would say is because like if you look at the top prospects or like the top draft order, the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players are all either center, power forward, small forward, power forward, center. So really, the next like prospect that's a guard is like how you stated earlier is Colin Sexton, and then like after him is power forward, shooting guard, small forward, power center. Like the next point guard really isn't until you get to Trayvon Duval, out of Duke.
I agree. I don't think there's really a clear-cut there is a clear-cut number one point guard, but he's very raw. So I don't think he's going to take on the reins. What you're also saying if you draft him is, we're going to give him the keys to the car, and we're going to accept it. We're probably going to struggle for a few years. Now, albeit you probably need to go ahead and accept that, but I think there's better players available too. So I wouldn't trade Mike Conley. I'd keep him and I'd build around him. I think that's fair.
I think you got to keep one at least if you rebuild.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, because he'll be that veteran too that the team can like sort of also like lead around. But that'll lead into our next point later on.
And kind of, we'll go ahead and transition into that leadership. I don't know who, but the Grizzlies have got to go out in free agency or got to go out in the trade market. They got to find somebody who can lead this team because the team has no leaders right now. Marc Gasol is not a leader. Mike Conley, as much as I love him, he's not really a vocal leader. So I don't know who, but like when they lost Vince Carter, Zebo, and TA, they lost a lot of leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can sort of tell that too. That's sort of where like the part of like the grit and grind, when they say like that went away, you can sort of feel it because those three sort of embody the phrase grit and grind. As you can see, like Tony Allen plays some of the best defense ever, but he'll like talk smack to you. Same with Zach Randolph. And then, you got Vince Carter, who was probably one of the most flashiest, but yet, tough players who played back in the early 2000s and the late 90s. So they embodied that grit and grind play that we're all used to seeing. But, they're sort of, they sort of like went away to, their other places. TA went to, he went to New Orleans. And, you had Zebo and Vince who went to Sacramento back with Coach Yeager. So you sort of lost that leadership and you sort of lost that, that anchor.
Yeah. I agree, and that's why I think like if you're never going to get these guys, but like if you could get a guy like an Andre Iguodala or a Sean Livingston or someone of that caliber over to the Grizzlies and just say like, look, we'll give you a three-year deal. We just want you to help these young guys. We want you to lead this team. We want you to be out there and play and give your all for us, but we really want you to be an example to these young guys that we draft or that we sign. These guys like Dylan Brooks and Kobe Simmons and Ivan Rabb and Deontay Davis. We want you to be a really, really good example for them. We want you to teach them how to play the right way. And just stuff like that. That can help their development. And I think if you get a guy like that and you get a clear voice in the locker room, you're going to be in much better shape. So there's that. And then now we kind of get into the negative aspects of all this. You've got to find a new GM. Chris Wallace is not getting it done.
Yeah, I can see what you're talking about. Like all you said earlier with all the draft picks and stuff like that, that was enough to sort of tee me off. And I was like watching the draft and seeing us like I seen us like trying to get like back into the first round, a couple years, but in that process we lost first round picks trying to get back into the first round, or we lost picks in general just trying to get back to picking. So something has to change.
I agree. And part of that has been just the drafting that Chris Wallace has not hit on a draft pick since his very first pick with the Grizzlies, which was Mike Conley. The only other draft pick that has played out more than just his rookie contract has been Jarrell Martin, which Jarrell Martin's been all right, but he hasn't been a first-round pick-worthy player. A lot of these guys have ended up traded or waived after their first year. Xavier Henry, Greivis Vasquez, good examples.
I loved Greivis Vasquez. I love that pick so much because he was literally one of my favorite college players.
DeMarre Carroll, who is now one of the best 3-and-D wings in the league, played 1 year with the Grizzlies, and then we got rid of him. Like, we draft these guys, and it's like they want them to be great right away, and when they aren't, they give up on them. And then guys, we could talk about the Ishim to beat trade deal all day. The fact
man,
they had Mark Gasol, they shouldn't have drafted Ishim to beat. That's a stupid pick.
that was that as far as the Grizzlies fan, that probably has to be one of the worst picks of all time. Like, it's frustrating.
Oh, without a doubt, it's one of the worst picks of all time. Mainly because it's a pick you didn't have to make. And look at everybody you passed up on. James Harden, Steph Curry, Tyreek Evans, Brandon Jennings, Jordan Hill, DeMar DeRozan. Like, you passed up on some great talent.
Yeah, that is ugly.
It's so I think that you need a new like kind of man in the front office to take over and to build with the fresh look. And obviously you got to also figure out who your coach is. Do we know who it's going to be next year? I don't know, but I don't think it's going to be JB Bickerstaff. And that's no disrespect to him because he's a good coach, but I just don't see it being him. So we've talked about all this, Darius. So let's just imagine that everything goes according to plan. This year pans out exactly how we think it's going to pan out. Let's say that Mark doesn't get traded, though, and let's say that we're not able to get a first-round pick, so we only have the top 6 pick. Let's say that we end up in that 4th overall pick where we would be right now. Where do the Grizzlies go from here if you're expecting Marvin Bagley, Luka Doncic, and Michael Porter Jr. to be those top 3 picks? Where do you go from there?
Man, it really depends on, like, I guess your need, I guess. And I mean, if we do like I said, if we do decide to keep Mark, which I mean he is getting up there in age, that's sort of rough. But I would look at someone who I would sort of look at would probably be Bagley, in my opinion. I think he's a game changer, in my opinion, and he's a franchise player.
I said that's Bagley's off the board.
That's really if he stays or not.
He's one of those that if he fell to the Grizzlies, God, I'd be so happy. I'd be so happy.
Yeah, I agree.
He's not a perfect player, but like offensively, like what he can give you is scary good. I think that another guy that's going to drop, and me and you kind of talked about it, I think Michael Porter's going to drop big time. I think that by the time June gets here and we're talking about the draft, I think he's going to be closer to the 10th pick than he is the 1st. So that's why I think getting that Brooklyn pick could be huge because, if he falls, you take him, and all of a sudden, like, look, if he's hurt, he's hurt. Give him time to get healthy. You're not in a rush. And then when you get him healthy, see what he can do for you. So,
is there a timetable on his return or anything?
Yeah, he's not going to play the rest of the season. He's not going to play. So I think that there's a good chance that he drops down some draft boards. I think there's a good chance. Now, one guy that I really don't know if he's going to be there, and I really don't know if he'll stay on the board at 4. I love DeAndre Ayton from Arizona.
Yeah.
He's a prototypical big. I told you earlier that if you want a good comparison, he's very similar to Joel Embiid. He's got a very similar body type. Physicality is about the same. His jump shot's about the same. He can step out and take threes. He's a good defender. He checks off all the boxes pretty much. He, in my opinion, is the most polished prospect there is in this class.
I agree. It's
really at this point just about learning how to guard without fouling.
I think he's a real good pick. And I think also coming from that system in Arizona, it'll transition well here. You can also add some spunk into the offense too, instead of that grinded out offense. I think he's a real good overall athlete, and like I say, he's very polished. So I mean, having that coming out the draft when you haven't really hit on a lot of your big men, that you have, or you haven't seen what you have out of them, yeah. I think he's probably one of the best prospects in the draft.
Yeah, I also think that he is also the pick if you're going best player available. Because I think there are a lot of people that can make the case that he's probably the best player in the draft. That he's probably better than Marvin Bagley, but there's a good case for both of them. That's the thing. Now that's if you're going based on best player available. If you're going based on need, what in your opinion do the Grizzlies need more than anything else right now?
Oh man.
Because I know what I think it is, but I really want to know what you think.
It's sort of rough because I don't know how the Grizzlies are gonna sort of shape out the rest of the year.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of thinking like, I don't know, are they gonna put Rab in the game, even though like they're not right now? But like, are you gonna see what you have out of them? Because if that's the case, well, I wouldn't say power forward, but I would more so say like, I guess around the two position, 2 or 3 position.
I was thinking wing. Yeah, the wing.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely your weak point right now. And it's no disrespect to guys like Dylan Brooks. I think Dylan Brooks is going to be a good ball player. I think he's going to be good. I think that going forward, he needs to be your starting 2 guard, period. Leave it at that. And until he starts showing that he's not – and look, like he's going to struggle because he's a rookie. It's how it is. You know, think about it from his perspective. At this point in the year, he's played 20-something games. In college, your season is over half over at 20-plus games.
Right.
So he's still kind of getting used to playing a full season. So I think you've seen enough out of Dylan Brooks to where you can say, all right, he's definitely – we got something there. He's a good one. Same with Ivan Rabb. Same with Deontay Davis. And despite the fact that we haven't seen a lot of these two, I think the same thing about Kobe Simmons. I think Kobe Simmons is going to end up being a pretty solid player too. If I had to pick the best wing in the draft, and it's not Michael Porter, it's hard to not look at a guy like Miles Bridges from Michigan State, who's very athletic. He's got potential to be a great defender. He's a very solid three-point shooter, and he's getting better at that. You got to find consistency to get there. And he's athletic, which means he can get to the rim and create his own shot. So I like Miles Bridges. I think they'll take a look at him. I also like Kevin Knox out of Kentucky. I think that he's gotten some comparisons to KD. And, well, I think obviously that's a very unfair comparison to make as he's one of the best players in the world.
Right.
Kevin Knox, there's a lot of things he does well. He's very athletic. He can get to the rim on just about anybody. He just needs to be a little more aggressive on that. And he can shoot fairly well from 3. He's got a good-looking jump shot. His jump shot's very technically sound. And I like that because most of the time in college, guys their jump shots don't really look good. Like, you know, obviously everyone knows the joke about Michael Kidd-Gilchrist and how bad his jump shot was.
Oh, my goodness.
Kevin Knox's jump shot is very technically sound, and I like it. So, and I think he's also going to be a good defender. I think that's a big thing is that there's a lot of people that think he could be a really good defender. And I think that's what he and Miles Bridges both do well. They're both good defenders. So I like those two. And as far as big men other than DeAndre Ayton, I think he's more of a prospect. He's more of a project. But I like Mohamed Bamba from Texas as well. I think that he's a good player as well. We talked about it. You got a lot of options. That top 6, any player you pick that is considered to be in the top 6, and I'll read that list off in a second once I pull it up, you're winning no matter who you get because you're getting a great player.
I agree. I think, and if like how you said earlier to like the wing position, you know, we ain't even talked about the guy you mentioned earlier, the international guys, Luka Doncic.
Luka Doncic, yep.
Yeah, but yeah, you said a 6'7" guard. Like who doesn't fear a 6'7" guard in the league? But like you said, his defense is sort of going to be iffy in the beginning because you know international versus the NBA is 2 totally different games.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those where, you know he's going to probably struggle at first with, obviously with the speed of the game. He's going to struggle.
Yeah.
But he's one of those – he's got such potential that you really think he could really end up being a really good player. So let's go through the top 6 like I mentioned earlier. Let's go through the top 6, and no matter who you get here, you are winning. So, number 1, DeAndre Ayton, center out of Arizona. And before I go on, it's important to point out, and this is the most incredible thing about the NBA game, about the college game now, all 6 of these players are 19 years of age or younger, so they're all freshmen.
Freshmen, yep.
Number 2, Luka Doncic. Number 3, Marvin Bagley. Number 4, Mohamed Bamba. Number 5, Michael Porter Jr. And number 6, Jaren Jackson Jr. from Michigan State. So notice how Kevin Knox, Miles Bridges, and Colin Sexton aren't even in the top 6, but we talked about those guys as potential, fits. And I think they are. I think those are guys that, I think if they were to pick any of those guys, like the number 4, number 5 spot, I wouldn't really call it reaching just because I think that they're that good. That's how deep this draft class is. So,
Oh yeah, I think you're hitting jackpot wherever you go. Yeah, I agree. I say it's definitely you're picking a jackpot wherever you pick at, because all of those guys you mentioned are real good players.
Yeah, for sure, for 100%. So at this point, the question has got to be: do we try to trade Marc Gasol? Do we try to get that another first round pick, or do we kind of ride it out and bring him back next year and bring Conley back next year and end up finishing in that 4th or 5th spot? I'll say this: if they can land DeAndre Ayton and play a twin tower game with Mark working the ball outside into DeAndre Ayton, that's a pretty sick tandem. Is it good enough to make the playoffs? I don't know, but it's one of those things where there's a lot of unknowns this year. There just are.
I agree, and I don't think about that too is that usually those situations, like even last year, with AD and Boogie, things like that take time. So I think maybe they have to get play the preseason and like play halfway through the year and see what you got and see does that actually work.
I agree. So the last thing we'll talk about, and this is something we didn't talk about beforehand because I really wanted this to be kind of authentic. Are there any players in the draft that you think maybe not necessarily – they're not going to be guys that are talked about as difference makers at the top of the draft, but guys in like the 25 to 30 range? Is there anybody there that you think the Grizzlies could go after and maybe just slide in on draft day and end up making a trade into the bottom half of the first round or into like the bottom 10th of the first round, maybe end up stealing a guy that could end up being a good player? I've got one in mind, but I want to see what you think.
I think I may know who yours is, but I'm sort of gonna be a homer, and I'm sort of gonna be like a little bandwagoner, but I'm gonna say Morvis Wagner out of Michigan. This guy is he can play he could play the power forward or he could play like the center. As far as like a comparison. I'm trying to think of a good comparison. I would say like a 4 or 5 with a great jump shot. So I would say like Mark-esque in a way. But as far as he's way younger, he literally plays like a Dirk. He plays like a Dirk or a Kristaps. So I mean, he gives you great offense, great defense. Let me check his height. He's 6'11", so he's borderline 7 foot. But watching him play alongside with guys like Muhammad Abdul Rahim Shareem, at Michigan right now, watching them play is sort of magical. So I sort of like watching him play, and I think him in a Grizzlies uniform would sort of be fun for me. But that's someone who I would really like. And like you said, you can play that twin tower game with him and Mark, alluding that you don't trade him.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can find him on here on this list of the top 60 prospects, just to see if I can get a gauge of where he'll be. So far, I'm in the 40s, and I actually haven't seen him yet. So he might actually be a legitimate idea there.
Okay,
maybe even in the second round, if you can end up getting to him there. 1 second. So you said you think you have an idea of who I'm going to say.
Now that you say that, I really don't know.
Moritz Wagner?
Yeah, Morvis Wagner.
Yo, he's at 57. Not bad.
Not bad.
So that's somebody you could land in the second round, I think. I think easily. I'd be happy with that. Ethan Happ from Wisconsin at 60. Wow, that low.
Wow. I was going to say, that low?
That low, man. He's had some good years there. So you think you know who I'm about to say. Tell me the school of the guy you think I'm about to say.
I ain't going to lie. At first, I got 2 guesses.
All right, what's the first one?
I know it's not the first one because you never even would have brought up that website. I was going to say MT.
It's not MT, no.
Is it Vanderbilt?
It's not Vanderbilt.
All
right, so I've got 2 potential here. I'm going to go with kind of the less obvious one, and this isn't necessarily a player, but it's kind of a player type.
Okay.
If you were to go, especially with how well he's played this year, I think getting a guy who is positionless like Jordan Murphy from Minnesota, I think Perrin Buford light, as we call it.
Perrin Buford.
I look at him and I kind of see a lot of Draymond Green in him.
I do.
A guy who's a good ball handler, a good passer. He can score, he can rebound, and he plays good defense. I mean, I think that's a guy that you could bring off the bench, and he's that energy guy. So I like, and he's not in that 60 at all. So you could potentially sign him as an undrafted free agent. So the guy that I really think you should look at near the end of the first round, and I'm going to watch this guy in the NBA. I'm going to give you one more chance to see if you can pick his school out.
This is rough. Let me check.
You're gonna kick yourself if you don't get this.
Please don't tell me is someone from
It's a big school. I'll go ahead and tell you it's a big school.
Duke.
Yep. I'm looking at Mr. Grayson Allen.
I knew it.
Grayson Allen. I'm just gonna say it, man. When it comes down to it, the kid can score.
Mm-hmm.
Just straight up. As far as if he plays good defense or not, as far as the tripping, I don't really care about all that. I'm looking at just as a player, the kid can score. He can shoot the ball. He's a good ball handler. What more could you want? You know what the Grizzlies have lacked for years? They've lacked that guy that you could sell. They've lacked a guy whose name you could sell. Mike Conley and Marc Gasol were it for a few years. You need to move on from that, and you need to build a new identity, a new brand. And that's why I think if you can get a DeAndre Ayton or a Kevin Knox or a Miles Bridges or even a guy like Mohamed Bamba, and then follow that up by getting, somebody like Grayson Allen who's a good scorer. And does his game translate to the NBA? Maybe, maybe not. But that's the fun of it all, is that he's a scorer. In the NBA, if you can score, you will have a place. Mm-hmm. So I think someone you should look at. Call me crazy, but I think Grayson Allen could end up being a good scorer in the NBA.
I think so too. As much as bad publicity that he gets, as far as looking as a prospect, like you said, the dude can score. He said his first game this year had over 30 points.
Oh yeah, he was great.
Yeah,
he and Bagley have formed a great tandem there.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, yeah, even like I stated earlier, if you get Bagley and then you bring along him, you already got the chemistry right there. So I mean, it's already set in stone.
So there's a lot of ways you can go in this draft. There are a lot of ways you can go. Now, of course, that's still about 6-7 months away.
Mm-hmm.
So let's not get carried away and say that we're already planning the future, even though I think the Grizzlies should start planning for the future. There's a lot of possibilities this year in the draft. And I think if the Grizzlies can make the right moves and find the person who is willing to make the right moves, I think they're going to be okay. You just got to have patience. You know what the number one thing we got to remember is plain and simple, we've been to the playoffs 7 straight years. There are some franchises who haven't been to the playoffs once in those years. So let's be happy with what we've done. Let's be thankful that the Grizzlies have brought NBA level basketball to Memphis and have represented it in such a good way. It may be time to move on, but let's just be thankful for the memories we've had.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is more of a transition type year. It's sort of like this is the year where they say crap hits the fan. So I sort of think this is probably going to be that year. Because like I said, if Mike comes back and then none of this forms out, then you're just you got to start rebuilding.
Yeah, I agree 100%. But it is late. I have a final tomorrow. Darius, luckily, does not have a final at all tomorrow, so he's already at home. I am not. So we're going to go ahead and call it a night right there. But for the R and Dizzle Sports Blizzle, I'm Rusty Alizzle.
Demo Horton. I hear a hoot.
See ya. Dilly dilly.
Hey.